Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webcast. It has been said that we've seen more innovation in the world in the last 4 months than we normally see in as many years. COVID-19 has changed the way consumers behave and therefore how businesses operate. Many were forced to adapt essentially overnight to digital channels. And this was the case for many retailers, both on the e-commerce side and storefront-centric businesses as well. But was the COVID crisis really the primary catalyst for these changes, or were they already underway? What do some of these trends mean, and what can we derive as meaningful lessons that retail-centric businesses can use to thrive in the future? Today, we are talking about retail and some of the interesting behavioral changes that we've seen in retail, particularly in the telecom business. Today, our agenda will cover a perspective on the evolving retail landscape. We'll talk a little bit about some of the retail consumer research and data trends that we've seen in the market. And of course, we'll also have a perspective on telecom and the retailer landscape in the telecom world. I'm joined today by several experts and speakers from Capgemini. I will turn it over to them to introduce themselves individually. My name is Vito. I lead global sector marketing at Capgemini. I will be your host and moderator today. But before we turn on our call, Steve, I'll turn it to you to introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Vito. Hello, everyone. My name's Steve Hewitt. I am the global lead within Capgemini Invent for our retail customer transformation initiatives.
Welcome, Steve. Nancy, please.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm a manager with Capgemini Research Institute, and I keenly track digital and consumer trends and how they impact businesses.
Thank you for joining us today, Nancy. And Philippe, we'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Philippe Blanc. I'm a vice president in the Telecom Media and Technology team within Capgemini Invent, and I work for telecom operators in both Europe, Eastern and Western, and Africa and the Middle East in particular.
Very good. Well, welcome to all of you. We're really pleased to be able to talk about this subject today. I want to start a little bit around talking about the trends we're seeing in retail. And Steve, we'll turn it over to you to take us through this, please.
Yeah, thanks, Vito. So yeah, in my role, I work with retail across countries. So from the UK to the US to Sweden to Norway to Germany to France. And across categories from grocery, department store, fashion, restaurant, home improvement. And one of the things that, I try to keep a perspective on amidst all the chaos of COVID is that actually before COVID, traditional retail was already experiencing pretty seismic shifts. And it's quite important not to lose the awareness and the understandings of what these are when thinking about what the responses should be, both immediately to the crisis of COVID, but then, very soon afterwards to get back to the agenda of solving the shifts that were happening anyway. And in the broad retail landscape, there were three big things occurring. There was online and digital introducing lots of pure play retail businesses that could compete very aggressively on price. Were challenging more traditional businesses with big store networks on the price point that they could serve to customers. You had new forms of competition actually entering into the sector itself, most notably the technology giants and the platforms. And they started introducing whole new customer experiences and fulfillment promises that traditional retail was struggling to keep up with. And then amidst all of this, the cost of selling, particularly the cost of selling through stores, was rising. So, all of these kind of combined to paint a landscape that was pretty challenging even before COVID. But despite the mass media hysteria, not a week going by where in one market you wouldn't see prophecies of the death of retail. People hadn't stopped buying products. They hadn't stopped needing products. What they had started doing was buying them elsewhere, buying them away from high streets, buying them away from shopping malls. And, this idea of a retail renaissance was occurring. Retail was having to reinvent itself to tackle these challenging circumstances. What COVID has done has poured fuel onto a fire that was already raging. And Nancy's going to talk to you about some of the trends that have really bubbled to the fore through our COVID research. But these trends, they all existed before COVID. They have just accelerated hugely. Nancy?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So we have seen COVID causing huge disruptions towards the businesses. And in today's fast-changing and volatile environment, how can organizations drive operational resilience and maintain their pre-COVID focus on customer engagement and customer relationships? So to answer this, we conducted an in-depth survey with around 11,000 consumers in 11 countries. And as a result of that, we found three key consumer trends emerging. The first one being consumers' appetite for online shopping is growing, and it will continue to accelerate once the lockdowns are lifted as well. As we see, consumers' interaction with physical stores was around 59% before the COVID outbreak. It dropped to 24% in the current scenario. It is expected to rise in the next 6 to 9 months, but it will still not reach the pre-COVID levels. Whereas on the other hand, consumer interactions with the online channels has been accelerating from 30% pre-COVID to expected to around 40% in the post-COVID scenario. So in this scenario, operational agility and fulfilling customer demand is critical in short run, and what is going to be key in mid to long run will be how organizations are differentiating themselves on customer engagement and consumer experience. So the second key trend which we are seeing from consumer behavior is regarding to health and safety. Around 77% of the consumers in our survey mentioned that they will be more cautious about issues of cleanliness, health and safety. Around 62% mentioned that they will be willing to switch brands that showcase a higher level of product safety. This safety perspective is also showcased in consumer behavior in stores. While shopping in stores in the next 6 to 9 months, more than 60% of consumers are mentioning that they will prefer to purchase with retailers that adopt safety practices in stores. 51% prefer to purchase with retailers who have reorganized their layout in the light of pandemic. 46% prefer to use digital payments to be more contactless. And 41% prefer stores that do not have touch-based checkout systems. So clearly there are implications for retail industry over here in terms of reorganizing to maintain social distancing, or looking at voice-based options, or looking at mobile-based self-checkout options. So these are some things which industry is evaluating today. Moving ahead. The third key trend which we saw is regarding to purpose and sustainability. So in our survey, a lot of consumers, a majority of them mentioned that they will be more conscious about conservations of natural resources. 65% mentioned that they will be more mindful about their purchase habits. And they expect a similar level of purpose-led organizations as well. So around 50% of consumers are saying that they prefer their retailer to showcase a sense of purpose and giving back to society and community. So clearly consumers will benefit those organizations financially and economically who have showcased a sustainability and purpose related credentials. So in these crucial times, it is important for organizations not to abandon their sustainability credentials, to look at sustainability in the entire value chain. And from a purpose perspective, they should look at initiatives to support communities, to support employees, and to support the entire humanity as a whole. The fourth key trend which we see in terms of consumers is the tightening of spending. They are looking at essential spendings like groceries. Around 35% of the consumers are preferring to increase spend on items like groceries, whereas the items like luxury, around 57% of the consumers are saying that they will decrease spending on these items. So clearly changing consumer trends in terms of increasing online, preference on health and safety, as well as focus on sustainability and purpose, as well as changing spending patterns will reshape the way retail has been. I hand it over to Steve.
Thank you, Nancy. So as I guess prefaced, I guess 3 of those 4 things really are accelerations of inevitables, really. Pre-COVID, online growth was slowly but surely increasing year on year. What's happened in COVID is in some countries like America, there's been the same growth in 10 weeks as the previous 10 years. It's accelerated many retailers to the level of online shopping that they expected to be within the next 2 to 3 years, not within this year. So accelerated the inevitability of online. Purpose and sustainability was also a big trend that we were tracking pre-COVID within retail, with more and more consumers becoming aware of their consumption habits, and this kind of idea of an age of mass consumption starting to come to an end, and a more conscientious consumption pattern emerging from that. COVID has raised awareness of consumption and has accelerated customers from thinking about this to actually starting to vote with their wallets around which brands and stores that they buy from. And health and well-being was a big topic before COVID. I think what COVID has done is introduce this idea of safety much more prevalent than it was before. And of course, the biggest new disruption is this shift in product buying category that comes hand in hand with the sort of deep recession that we're about to find ourselves in. And all of this taken together, the headline act might be online, and the challenges and pressures that this new growth faces to online operations and experience. But really, it's stores that are going to bear a big brunt of all of this acceleration, because it's stores that need to really understand how they're going to be enablers of omni-channel experiences, and how they're going to enable the kind of fulfillment options that consumers have come to expect within retail. And even if retail climbs and sustains to 40%, that's still 60% of sales coming through stores. And how are they going to change to deliver experiences that deal with the anxieties that customers coming back are going to have? And how do they economically make sense when, for many countries, social distancing policies are going to mean that the throughput of customers into stores is drastically reduced? And then last but least, lurking behind all of this, that big question of what is the actual value exchange that you receive from coming into a store when you can sit on a sofa and do everything that stores were really originally built for. So stores are where we see some of the biggest pinch points of COVID in retail. And before COVID, you saw already some of the ways that stores were starting to evolve. Some stores, for example, Camp in North America, is an illustration of where stores began to solve dual purposes. Camp's part kiddie crash, part toy retail store. And you see more and more concepts starting to appear where they are playing with this idea of experiential retail. And for many, what that really means is, yes, you still sell products, but you do something more to entertain and be more of a social space for customers. On the other extreme, you had stores like Hema in China, where the focus in there was, how does the store become a central part to enable hyper local, hyper quick fulfillment options? So within our fulfillment delivery or click and collect. And this is enabled through robotics and having automated pick pack systems running through the same stores that customers are walking around. The other examples you started to see were responses to just the threat to the retail business model, and consumers changing their buying behaviors from this idea of access over ownership. So Rent the Runway being a fascinating example of, for fashion, where you don't buy the clothes, you rent the clothes. And their store again in New York being this whole new concept, really, where you're coming in and you're browsing clothes, but you're not there to buy, you're there to rent, and it's a spot to come and return the clothes that you've rented. So this was all happening pre-COVID. right now, in the aftermath of COVID, the focus is more around how a store's going to combat with those new anxieties. But you can see many of the same features and solutions that are being implemented now that kind of echo these shifts that were happening before. In China, there's been an uplift in how is the store more roboticized to enable autonomous shopping, whether that's in unmanned stores at Alibaba or putting in place touchless lockers in Muitan so that customers can pick up their products without physical human interaction. Starbucks look to convert its stores and its customers to ordering ahead. So creating the kind of click and collect experience, but for coffee and restaurant. And others in Italy, for example, have looked at how can digital technologies enable customers to be aware of when stores are building so that customers can more efficiently plan their routes through the stores and minimize risk of crowding. So lots of interesting stuff was happening before COVID. It's now been accelerated. And I think there's lots of learnings for broader businesses that are retailing to customers to take for this. I'm going to hand over to Philippe to talk about the specifics of Telecom and how this is all manifesting there.
Yes, we just highlighted a massive change in consumer behavior, and this expected shift, we think, will force operators to reconsider their multi-channel retail setting, offline, online, maybe starting with physical retail. What does that mean? Well, depending upon the level of change in the footfall, obviously telco operators will have to revisit the size of their retail network, or may have to revisit, and that will really depend on how consumers behave in the coming weeks. Though we think beyond that, operators should ensure that their retail network does evolve in different directions. Obviously, most operators have started to enable a safe and touchless experience store-wise. So starting with digital appointments, so easing the customer visit to the stores. So that's an example of the Orange digital appointment service, starting with virtual queuing. So at this stage, most operators offer physical queuing with social distancing. We think they should be expanding into virtual queuing whenever there is a rush hour, and that's something that customers can be easily used to, being regular app users. Obviously, enabling a smooth entry to the shop, such as A1 in Austria is offering with automated sensors, managing the inbound and outbound flows of the store, depending on the level of customer density in the store. And last but not least, securing a touchless and safe visit, making sure that from browsing to digital payment, everything can be done touchless without risk for the consumers. But that's really the real basics. We think operators should embark on more than that, starting with offering some multi-channel availability and possibilities for consumers to interact differently with the shops, not only physically, obviously, but also remotely. So those are examples of Carrefour offering phone accessibility to their supermarket to make sure that some people could order remotely and get either delivered or click and collect. But that also happened in the telecom industry, with a number of operators trialing virtual tours or video tours of their own stores or phone appointments, so that customers could get a remote, touchless contact with sales agent and ensure that they get the answers and the proximity that stores are obviously there to deliver. As mentioned also for China and Starbucks, we have a major trend happening there. We think shops should be more than just handling a reduced number of incoming flows, reduced footfall. Shops should consider increasing and expanding their presence from an outbound standpoint in a local catchment area. That includes offering in-app purchase to the store and enabling express deliveries from half hour to 2 hours in urban areas, such as Starbucks is doing in China, but as most product categories are now available in China for consumers. So that really expands the reach of shops beyond their role of managing incoming footfall. With regards to digital, and the balance is still to be defined, we think also the increase in take-up will lead to several trends, both an acceleration in the digital roadmap, which operators should really enable, but also a number of transformation and new directions which operators should follow as far as digital retail is concerned. Starting with the acceleration in their digital roadmap, we believe operators should be doing both maximizing the full digital journeys for simpler services. That's the example of Flex enabling a digital-only remote subscription to their mobile service in Poland. But probably operators should go one step further and also digitalize even more complex use cases, such as the one they have delayed so far around fiber subscription, convergent migration, etc., which are typically physical use cases handled by customer care and shops, and which operators should consider also offering online. Moving online further to meet the new habits of customers, operators should also consider this new need for consumers to go beyond automated digital with the Zooms and the Teams, but also provide interactivity and a humanized approach to digital. And that's a journey which Three in the UK has embarked on, with two significant initiatives. One is their live streaming channel, retail channel, demoing products, offering consumers answers to their questions and interacting with consumers. That's Three Live channel, but also enabling digital prospect from their eShop to interact with real sales agent in store to have their questions and needs answers, to enable as well operators to increase their conversion rate. So those are a new way of expanding digital beyond the pure automated basic eShop journeys. Though, as mentioned by Steve, we think operators should also consider new sales mode, which had a dramatic acceleration during the COVID crisis and the lockdown period in China, talking about live streaming events. So those are event-based shops where brands partner with digital leaders, opinion leaders, digital influencers to not only demo the product, answer questions, but also be able to sell, yes, category like beauty, but also very complex products such as luxury or automotive, which could very much apply to the telecom industry. And secondly, also consider group selling over social networks. So those are private sales to the telecom operator community online, based on specific offers on their mobile app and social networks. So those are really trends which operators should start considering, and directions which they need to embark on as far as retail is concerned. Let me hand it over to Vito for conclusions now.
Very good. Thank you, Philippe. And thank you also to Steve and Nancy, our speakers today, for those perspectives. You know, today we learned a lot about the perspective on retail, Capgemini's view on retail, and some of the interesting behavioral changes we've seen in the industry, and with a little bit of a focus on telecom retail in particular. If you have any questions or you would like to continue the conversation with one of our experts, please do feel free to reach out to us at Capgemini on our website. You'll see some links on the webpage where you're viewing this recording to be able to get in touch with us. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon. Bye for now.